Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel, RV Tips from Jan. Today's topic, why do some folks just pick up and quit RVing? Well, this can be a controversial subject, but one that I really wanted to try to tackle because some of the things that we're going to share with you as the core reasons that some folks quit RVing certainly apply to my wife and myself, and we've had to work hard to overcome these. So I'm hoping that by sharing our experiences with you, this will help you to have a more enjoyable RV experience. So let's get started looking at the reasons as to why some people quit RVing. And as we do that, let's remember here that the key is to have fun. If RVing becomes more work than play, it's time for us to make some changes. And what are some of the factors that can become more work than fun? Number one, it's just too much work. Every time we head out and return from camping, we are exhausted. Stop and think about those of us that are weekend campers. We pack up on Friday afternoon after getting home from work. It's been a tough work week. We head out on the road. We fight the Friday night traffic. We finally get to the campground and to our campsite. We unpack, we set up, we rush through dinner, we may have a campfire, then we go to bed. Get up the next morning, have breakfast, and start our activities for the Saturday. Before we know it, Saturday's over. We're having dinner, another campfire, going to bed, and thinking about breakfast the next morning, and then packing up right after breakfast to head home. We finally get home on Sunday, and we stop and think, gosh, wasn't it just, it was just Friday, a day and a half ago, that we packed up to go camping. And now we're home. We've got to unpack from our camping trip. And oh, by the way, get ready for the new work week. So how do we overcome this feeling that this is just too much work? We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Number two, I hate sitting up at the campsite as I'm tired from the travels and just ready to relax, unwind, and have an adult refreshment. I certainly know this feeling, and you probably do too. So let's talk about what we can do to help make this particular part of the experience less of a burden for all of us. Number three, towing that big box is nerve-wracking. Big trucks, crosswinds, and discourteous drivers make towing my RV more work than fun. Oh boy, we could all relate to this. Well, we're going to talk about how we could help ourselves to overcome this too. For some of us, this is more of an issue than others. My RV always seems to need some sort of repairs and or maintenance done to it. This is a drain on the wallet and my patience. Well, we're going to share with you that regular maintenance and some repairs, either for the good or bad, the fact is it's just a part of the RV experience. So we're going to talk about this one too and how we can overcome it. I sleep terrible in my RV. I miss my bed at home. Well, this is another one that we can experience, and we'll talk about what we might be doing concerning this particular issue too. Camping can be great when the weather is great, but it can be miserable when the weather is miserable. This is particularly true if we have kids or grandkids, and we'll address this point for you in a few minutes also. Many of the parks that are affordable don't have pull-through sites, and backing up our RV is you fill in the blank. And depending on the size of our RV, our experience in towing and backing up, this can either be a non-issue or a huge issue for us, particularly if you're relatively new to RVing and towing, and particularly backing up that RV. This can be a real challenge. So what are some of the solutions to these common RV concerns? Bear with me as we sort of talk through these with you. Now, you may not agree with this one, and it's a bit controversial, but let me share it with you anyway. Bigger is not always better. Consider the tiny house approach. Our son is a good example of this. He and his wife had a beautiful 34-foot trailer, and it just was fantastic for them and their family. But towing it was more challenging, even though he had the right truck and setup with hitch and load leveler, anti-sway. All of that was what it needed to be. But still, towing that 34-foot trailer was a challenge. And then getting it into some of these campsites, particularly some of the state parks that have smaller campsites, was a real challenge. They actually ended up downsizing to a 24-foot trailer, 10 foot less. And not only was the towing experience much more pleasurable, but the whole experience of setting it up, getting it into the site, getting it level, all of those things that go with the RV experience were much easier with the 24-foot versus the 34-foot. Now, a lot of us like the bigger units because they are so nicely appointed. It's nicer in some cases than what we even have at home. But bigger is not always better in terms of towing and in terms of setup and getting it in and out of these sites. Another solution, think less is more when it comes to supplies, clothing, and yes, even those extra tools that we often are convinced are needed just in case something comes up. All those extra supplies, clothing, and tools add extra weight. They're more difficult to keep organized, and they add an extra element of complication to the whole RV and camping experience. By thinking less is more, we can make the whole experience simpler from start to finish, whether it's loading up to go out for the weekend or whether it's unloading when you get back from the weekend. Think less is more. If you need a tool, more than likely somebody in the park's going to have it, or you can go rent one at the local hardware store if you really need that tool. But don't pack it thinking someday I may need it. It just takes up extra space and extra weight. In terms of the whole setup and teardown experience, one thing that we have found can be very helpful, and this requires a bit of discipline, admittedly, have a checklist and a timeline for setup. Now, the advantage to both is that not only you have a sense for when you're going to start, when you're going to finish, but everyone in your party has the same timeline in their mind. So, when you get to the campsite and you're unloading, setting up, the entire party will know, well, this is about the time that should be done. We can plan to have dinner, sit down and relax, get the campfire going, versus having that setup run well into the evening, dinner running late, you being tired, your party that you're with waiting. Having this checklist and timeline ahead of time can really help you to be more efficient in this whole process, not only for you, but for everyone else in your party. Have a backup plan in case the weather turns nasty. Don't wait until the morning it's raining to decide what you're going to do, particularly if you have children or grandchildren, and particularly if you are with other campers that you're sharing the whole weekend with. Have that backup plan decided ahead of time. That way, when everybody gets up in the morning, if the weather's bad, everybody knows what the game plan is for the day, and you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to decide on that with maybe even some differences in opinion as to what everybody should be doing that day when the weather is bad. When the weather is bad, let your backup plan kick into place. When it comes to repairs and regular maintenance, if you're not very handy, you really should not own an RV. Owning an RV, the whole RV experience is going to go hand in hand with some required maintenance and some required repairs. RVs are very well built, but as they say, it's like a house going down the road during an earthquake. They take a lot of abuse on the highway. And even the best built RVs will have some issues that are going to require some maintenance and some repair work. If you're not handy and can't do that, you really should not get into the whole experience, because that will require you to take it to the dealer to have these things fixed. And you'll find out that you'll have it at the dealer more often than you'll have it ready to go camping. And the cost through the dealers will just be out of sight. So this is just something to consider. It's part of the RV experience to be able to do some repairs and some regular maintenance. And when it comes to our sleeping conditions, make sure that we have a comfortable sleeping accommodations. If you enjoy reading before going to bed, add reading lamps. If you enjoy a glass of wine before going to bed, plan on bringing a bottle with you on the outing. Make your experience as close to that as if you were home, sleeping in your own bed there. It's important that you and all of your guests get a good night's sleep. And having the proper sleeping accommodations is an integral part of that. When planning your trip, plan to have some downtime to stop, freshen up, and relax before continuing your travels. This will help you and those in your party to have a more enjoyable experience. You'll be able to do some unwinding from the white knuckle experience. And when you finally get to your destination, you should be less tired and feel more refreshed, simply because you took the time for a break, for either a cup of coffee or some refreshments, and just to do a little bit of unwinding during the trip. And then lastly, as we started this presentation, remember the key is to really have fun. If RVing becomes more work than it is play, it's time for us to make some changes. This is a wonderful experience, and one that we and our families can create many years of wonderful memories. But don't let it become a burden, so that when you get back from an RV trip, whether it's a weekend or a week, you and your party are ready for another vacation. You want to get back and be refreshed and have enjoyed the whole experience of owning and operating your RV. Well, I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please check that subscription box. But most importantly, as we say at the end of all of our videos, please continue to be safe and stay well. Thank you for watching.